Hello.
Pleasure meeting you in person, I guess.
Oh, you too. Oh, this went pretty smoothly. Usually we have some sound issues in the beginning.
Yeah, well, I put this on because I'm working from home today. We take turns coming into the office, and my turn's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. So today I'm at home, and I have birds, and so when they hear me talk, yes, they go on and on. So hopefully you won't hear them over this.
Oh,
I hope
yeah,
that's
that's
the
a great
case.
idea. And you're a naturalist, so I would expect that you would have birds at
Yeah,
home.
that and the dog and fish. Yeah, a little bit of everything. What can I say?
That's great. Um, so again, just as way of background, these videos will be embedded on our map of hidden gems
Okay.
that we're releasing on National Walking Day on April 7th.
Sounds
So
good.
I've interviewed a few different people who are talking about different points on the map.
Sure.
So the way this has worked well is that I will ask the questions and then I'll go on mute, and then Zoom is recording us. So then it will definitely pick up your video and your voice.
Okay.
And then when you're done talking, I'll go off mute and ask the next question. So
Gotcha.
I won't say much once we start recording.
Okay. Sounds good. I have a little bit of allergies, so hopefully I won't be sniffling up too much when we do this.
Okay, well, if you need to stop, that's okay. We can edit things out.
Gotcha.
So first, let's get started. I will ask you to just say your name and your title.
Yes, it's Alonzo. I'm the Natural Resources Manager for Arlington County Parks.
Great. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, how long you've worked for Parks and Recreation, what you do as a Natural Resources Manager, and what you like about your job.
Okay, so I've been full-time with the county for about 25 years. You can add another 3 years, I guess, part-time work and so forth. I started off as a park naturalist, doing mostly environmental education, walks, and so forth. Then I was the acting director of Long Branch Nature Center for about 5 years. And then I guess about 7 years ago, I became Natural Resources Manager. And I really like what I do, even though I love education. That's basically in my heart. I get to do a lot more widespreading type of communications now. So I oversee plans and so forth. I run the invasive plant program in order to control invasives in the county. I serve as a subject matter expert on all things wildlife, that sort of thing. And I really enjoy my work because it's across the whole county.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a varied job and outdoors and active. So aside from the Robert Hanssen story, which I find really interesting, why do you think the Long Branch Nature Center would qualify as a hidden gem walking destination? And what should people be sure to do when they visit?
Well, it's a wonderful location. So, I mean, I was just there yesterday, and as a matter of fact, at the time, the two ponds were just full of life. The wood frogs were all mating. The peepers were singing left and right. It was just beautiful. So again, all times of the year, it's fantastic. And if you can partake in any of their programs, it's really great. We're well known for our flying scope programs. We've been featured on Animal Planet twice now on them. We do all sorts of education for youngest kids to the oldest kids. I mean, everything from, as the naturalists say, from the womb to the tomb. We cover everything, whether it's family programs and so forth, at night campfires, leading walks for adults, acting, talking to civic associations and to groups such as the Master Naturalists and Master Gardeners, things like that. So it's fantastic. And when you go over there, there's great woods. There's a stream that goes by. There's a natural playground there. We have all sorts of trails, beautiful gardens. I mean, if people have not been there, I don't know why you haven't been there, because you're missing a lot.
So how can you tell what the frogs are doing now? What do they make noise, or what makes a lot of noise? I've heard noises by the water these days? Is that the frogs or is that something else making noise?
Yeah. So for about 2 weeks, the wood frogs go nuts. They're what they call vernal pool species. So right after winter, usually in beginning of March, they show up in the ponds by the hundreds, and the males are singing like crazy. They sound a little bit like quacking ducks, quack, quack, quack. And then the females are there too. In the background are the spring peepers. They're the ones go beep, 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 and those will really come into their own come April, beginning of April. But right now, there are already a few out there. The spotted salamanders already laid their eggs. So it's a wonderful destination to see a really great natural phenomenon, and that is a vernal pool explosion of actually watching these breeding amphibians all coming to their destination or to lay eggs and continue their life cycle. And this is the perfect time to come there and see this in person.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds fun. So the little story, the spy story that I wanted to talk about with the Nature Center. So I read that there was a day in 2001 when you were doing the Tiny Tots program and FBI agents showed up at the Nature Center. So can you tell me a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I guess I'm the last staff person left who had any association with these kinds of things. But it actually started the day before that, on February 12th, which was Lincoln's birthday. It just turned out that they had discovered $50,000 in used bills that had been placed over in the Long Branch Amphitheater. So there was that. And at the same time, the FBI were already exploring Robert Hanssen's Taurus, his car. So they were doing all sorts of different things, and they'd already known what his dead drop sites were, and what Long Branch, which was codenamed Lewis, was one of them. And so they right away knew that this was where that was going on. And the very next day, I was sitting there, and I was actually taking the money for the Tiny Tots program. It was being run by one of her part-timers named Barb, and she came out because she said, "Hey, there's two guys here, and they're not participants." And so I came in there and I saw these two very well dressed gentlemen, dark suits, and obviously with no kids. And so I came over and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they said, "Hey, we'd like to talk to your supervisor." So I led them to the back, and it turned out that Greg Zell, my supervisor, was not there at the time. But when I closed the door right behind me and I turned back around, they had the badges out, and they were basically saying, "Hey, that they were the FBI, and that they needed to talk to me about doing some things at the Nature Center." And they were asking about being stationed there and so forth. And I basically said, "Well, I can't approve that, so I need to talk to my supervisor," and so forth. I'm assuming that same day, that night, I guess afterwards, they had made arrangements with the county, and we turned off our surveillance system, our alarms, and they got stationed in one of our closets where we keep all of our chairs and tables. And they were there for 6 days. There were all sorts of programs. We had other preschool programs. We had Tiny Tot programs, all sorts of things that went on until he actually, the following week, that Sunday, they actually had busted Robert Hanssen at another dead drop zone. And I can explain why they didn't catch him at Long Branch. It's a little bit more of another story, but we found out about it the very next day, that Monday, which we were closed. We're usually closed on Mondays, and it was happened to be President's Day, but the animals have to eat. And since I lived in Arlington, I had to go feed the animals. They came over and they said, "Hey, we're taking all our equipment out of there. We wrapped up with her investigation." And I said, "Well, how did it go?" And the guy just smiled and said, "It went well." And they took all their stuff out, and so be it. Next day at 7 a.m., I guess, on the Today Show, the news broke, and I didn't know what was going on. Phone calls were ringing, and at one point, somebody said there's something going on in the amphitheater. So I went over to the amphitheater, and there was Univision doing an interview. And I came over to him and I said, "Hey, can I help you guys?" And they looked at me and they said, "Well, it's a public park. We can do this." And I said, "Well, yes, but normally the press asks permission in order to use the parks." And they go, "Well, you really don't know what's going on." And I said, "Well, no, we'll go listen to the news." And I was very surprised. So I walked back to the Nature Center, and there was my coworker, Wendy, actually there. She opens the door and she goes, "Hey, I just got off the phone with the BBC. What is going on?" And I said, turn on the news. We got to find out what is going on. And lo and behold, we found out that this had just happened. And we put two and two together and said, wow, he was busted in another park, okay, at a particular park, at Foxton Park. But obviously this is connected to it, or they wouldn't be investigating our little piece. And right away, we contacted, our media people, and they said, hey, don't say a word. We don't know what's going on. Keep quiet. And so we did. As people said, I'm sorry, we're really not allowed to comment on it, not allowed to comment on it, not allowed to comment on it. And so be it. Until a couple of days later, when the same, I'd met, actually, it turned out he was the public relations officer for FBI. He had come in and talked to us before. I think his name was Dick Bridges or something. Anyway, he came over, and right away he comes over, he sees me there. I'm smiling, goes, hey, we couldn't have told you what was going on. And I go, no, I understand that, but wow, really? I can't believe that all happened here. And they go, hey, can I talk to your supervisor? So they went back there. There was my supervisor, Greg, and they presented him a cap, an FBI cap, as a thank you for his cooperation and all this kind of stuff. And since then, we've been doing yearly programs, usually the anniversary of his date, on his capture, usually February 18th. That's when we usually do the programs, and we continue to do them to this day.
I guess you probably didn't do one this year, did you?
Yes, this year was a bummer. It's the first time, I guess, since 2002 that I have not done a program. And sometimes too, because we sometimes get special requests to do it. But yeah, I felt very sad we were not able to do it. And again, there's so many neat things, because there's something like 6 or 7 books written on this, 3 movies. But the funny thing is, a lot of the stuff there does not cover Long Branch. They always cover where he was caught. They cover all that kind of stuff. But our special contribution is we know what happened at our park, and it's not written in any of the books. And that's our way of doing it. And we've been very lucky, because at one point, the Spy Tours of Washington, they came over, listened to our presentation, and they were very happy with what it was. They wanted to add our site to their regular tours, and they thanked us for the information. They said that we had done a great job. And it's also turned out that another year, several FBI guys I did not know were in the audience. And afterwards, they came over and goes, hey, we heard about this. We wanted to hear it. You did a great job. And there's nothing like hearing something that, from someone else, especially since I'm a naturalist. I know wildlife, but I don't know that much about history. But now it's definitely cultural history as well as regular history that Long Branch is part of.
So I went to the amphitheater to scope it out. And first of all, I've been to the nature center so many times, and I couldn't figure out where the amphitheater was. And I'm like, oh, it's right here. But it's pretty hidden. But I couldn't figure out where you would hide a bag of $50,000.
Yeah.
So where was it?
So this is the thing. First of all, it's changed a lot. You have to remember, it was a great location because you can come in there and park. And from that location, you can hear traffic or people coming down the path. It's a great place to keep out of the way and know things are happening. But you also have to know that it's been reconstructed. They redid the whole stage. They added a fire pit. They redid the whole back. They cemented the whole bottom. I should have paved the whole bottom of it. And so it looks nothing like what it was before. Originally, in the back, there were 2 poles. We would hang up a screen so you could see movies and so forth at night. It was one of our other popular programs. And there was some electricity, a connection in the back. And right below there was about maybe a 4 or 5 inch gap. And underneath there is where they stuck the money. And again, it was wrapped up as almost all of every time they did everything, they always wrapped it up in black plastic trash bags. And that's how it was protected. And again, all sorts of funny stories about what happened, but that's why you couldn't see what was going on, because part of it was it's been reconstructed. But at the time, I used to hide things in there. At the end of my program, I pulled the cash out and I'm like, wow, it was there the whole time. And a lot of neat things. First of all, during one of the times, one of the the public relations officer for FBI told us they had several hiccups, and I can explain some of the crazy stuff that went on. But one of the things was, while they were watching this, a kid reached down under there, and they were like, oh my God, he's pulling out the money. And right away, the mom slapped the kid on the kid. Don't you be touching trash or whatever, and walked away. And we're like, whoa, that would have been terrible if they found the money. And again, we know there was at least 2 times, 3 times that money was laid there, and not one of us ever found it. So unfortunately, that was our loss, I guess.
So then that was money the Russians hid and Robert Hanssen was going to pick up. So
Yeah.
do you know why he never came for it?
Yes, that's a long story. So it was, you got to remember that over the 22-year career, and he took big breaks up to 6 or 7 years at a time. He wasn't like constantly doing these kinds of things. So that money was laid out, I believe, by the SVR, the follow-up to the KGB once the fall of the Soviet Union. So it was during that time that he did no spy work because he was afraid someone was going to catch him. So he started it back up again, and he had developed a very great system of how to do these things. And they were based on what they call dead drops. You drop something off and you leave a sign. Basically, the sign that they would do was a piece of tape up and down meant something has been left. A piece of tape on the other side meant that there was something that Hanssen had to pick up. So what we believe happened, and it's in some of the books they talk about this, is that there used to be a telephone pole before this school, what was a Kenmore, had gotten rebuilt. And over there, people would tack things up and so forth. And that's where he put the piece of long white tape saying, oh, I left something for you. Or in the case of the SVR, they would have left a horizontal tape saying, hey, we've left something for you, in this case, money. But the weather was terrible during that time. And we also had a rash of incidents of some of the middle schoolers actually tearing things down from the telephone posts and doing some things like that. And so we suspect between the terrible weather, the rain, and these kids tearing stuff down, he never received a signal that there was the money. In fact, the FBI said that 2 feet away from there, when they cleaned up and checked out the site, they found the long piece of tape which had been dropped and missing over there. So Robert Hanssen never got the signal. So he went to his iron site. There was another backup system saying, look, if things don't go right, once a year on this date, February 18th, you can go here and that will exchange communications. And so he went there because he did not receive the signal to pick up the money at Long Branch. So instead of going to the Lewis site, Long Branch, he went to the Ellis site, Foxstone. There, he laid the money out, put this sign down, I've left you something. And of course, that's where he was busted. But for all practical purposes, had the weather or the kids not messed with it, he would have been busted at Long Branch.
Wow, that's really interesting. And that could have been kids twice who almost spoiled this notorious spy.
Yeah, there's lots of things. There's lots of things that could have happened. I mean, some of the things that went wrong were hilarious. At one point, and we found that later from the neighborhood watch people, whatever. There had been a person walking their dog, and of course, you're supposed to keep your dogs on leashes, folks. And this person's dog was on a leash, so he came over barking, whatever. And the lady came back to collect her dog and realized that her dog was barking. There was a guy lying prone in the woods in camouflage, and the dog was barking. So right away, she grabbed the dog, freaked out, called the cops. But the suspicion is that was one of the FBI guys, because for the first day, and this may have been one of the reasons they asked for it, it was miserable weather or whatever, but one of the reasons to want to be inside was there was much too much traffic there. And so someone should have seen them. And that's why they asked to be able to work on the inside. And there's lots of stories like that of things that did not go right. On one other occasion, we were supposed to not set the alarm. And okay, we would not set the alarm, but the nature center was undergoing construction at the time, and our contractors was by Hit Construction Company, and they had a great guy named Guy Champlain. He was their foreman who was doing the things, and the guy felt terrible because when he was destroying everything, he was taking apart the tanks for the animals, and the animals had no place to stay, so we were putting them in temporary storage. He felt so bad that he would stay after work for himself to reconstruct the tanks so that the animals would not have to stay that way. So wouldn't you know it, one day he's doing this after work, I've already left for home, and he does this and goes out, oh wow, Alonzo forgot to put the alarm on. So to not get me in trouble, he puts the alarm on. As soon as one of the FBI guys comes out of the closet, the alarms go crazy. You can hear it across the whole neighborhood. So right away, they call me. I was living in Arlington, so I was the first person on the call list. And now it's different. I mean, we have lock boxes, you can do things. But at the time, they needed someone to reset the alarm. Why come over there? I can hear the things. There's people staring. I'm walking down in there right away. Two FBI guys open up the doors. They are furious. And they're like, I swear, I don't know what happened. He goes, I'll tell you what happened. It was the crazy such and such. He's the guy who did that. He was the same guy who'd also been complaining because he had seen the FBI guys investigating things. And right away, he came over to him and said, look, we have a contract with the county. Other people not supposed to do this work. And I said, no, those are park staff. And I said, no, they're not. He used an insult and he goes, no, I don't think so. They did not have, Arlington County written on them. There's somebody else, and I'm going to report this. And I'm like, wow. So him trying to be so helpful really caused a lot of issues.
So why did they say they were hiding in the closet for 6 days if they couldn't tell you what was wrong?
Well, we suspect that what was going on, we thought, and again, this was myself, the other staff, Wendy and Greg, we assumed that it was some kind of drug deal. I mean, it's unfortunate, but at night, whatever, a good place to do these things are these parking lots. You can do things, get back out. And as I mentioned, it's a very good location to do it because you can keep an eye out on everybody coming in to catch you. So they decided that it was too open. People would see them coming, this and that. And then, like I said, the weather was really bad. So they came over and they used our chair closet. And I only once ever found what was going on in there because during the day, they were quiet as church mice, never moved. Half the part-time staff, we weren't allowed to tell the part-timers that this was going on, okay? They had no idea that there were two FBI, I think there were two that I noticed inside their watching surveillance equipment. They laid it out on top of the chairs. They were watching this kind of stuff. But I don't know, lucky enough or unlucky enough to watch them when they had a changing of the guard as they were. And so the doors open. I'm like, oh, I looked inside. So the surveillance device, they closed up real quick. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they are doing surveillance. And that's why they did it. They ran wires because we had electricity and so forth. They ran wires down there so that they had cameras. They can watch the whole thing. And their center of operation was right inside our chair closet in the big meeting room that we have for Long Branch, where all our programs take place.
That's crazy. But what about like if they wanted to use the bathroom or go to lunch or something, like did they just stay in there all day?
They stayed in there all day. The only time I ever saw them move was at night when they probably figured I was already gone, that there wasn't any staff around. That's when they did that. So I'm guessing that they only came out when they had to, and they changed up people at nighttime. I never saw them change up people any other time except at that one time at night. Yeah.
So you didn't talk to them much at all, except when they were angry that the alarm went off.
Yeah, they were very angry, but they did not talk to us. And again, I'm pretty sure that they weren't allowed to. And we, of course, weren't going to interfere with what was going on. The whole time, I actually, when they first came over and they showed me the badge and they said they're FBI, I was thinking, oh, my goodness, what did Wendy do, my coworker? And then it turned out we thought, oh, it's a drug deal. We'll keep out of the way. We'll cooperate with them and so on. But again, I'm sure they were told they weren't supposed to talk to us.
I love that story. And, I know the Foxstone Park story because that's in the movie Breach.
Yes.
But I don't know that the Nature Center is. So I only very recently found out that Long Branch was involved in the Hanssen story. So I think it's a great story. And some of that stuff is actually really funny, even though the whole thing isn't funny, but the little miscommunication and mistakes are pretty funny. So I know we're almost at time. So is there anything else fun that you want to share about Robert Hanssen or about the Nature Center?
Yes, so several things. One of which is we were asked, or actually my boss asked them, hey, what if one of us had found the money? And they said, well, we weren't going to go. Well, the Russians weren't going to claim it. So after they used it in the thing, we could have claimed it. I'm like, wow, how many times? At least 2 or 3 times I could have gotten an extra bonus, I guess, in my job. That was one. The other thing is that they asked, did I ever meet Hanssen? Did I ever see him or whatever? As far as I know, he never came into the Nature Center. I think most of this happened on his own outside. So I never got to see him. And that was one other thing. And again, as far as the nature center, folks, you definitely have to go and check it out. Sign up for a program, take a walk, take your kids over there, enjoy nature, enjoy the 2 ponds that we have. I really think it's a hidden gem. If not for the wonderful wildlife, the flying squirrels and everything else that goes in, well, then there's a little bit of history for you guys to explore as well. So I invite you guys to come out and check it out. And I hope that if this program happens again next year around February 18th, I hope you guys can participate. Thank you.